The first students of the new University of East Anglia were taught not in the concrete buildings that we see today, but in prefabricated timber ones known as the UEA Village. My name is David Luckhurst. In 1962, when I was 28, I joined the Norwich firm of Field and Mawson Architects. 3 weeks after I'd started, I was given the job of project architect for the village, with David Mawson as the partner in charge. The aim of the village was to permit students to be taught well before permanent buildings for this could be designed and built. This is Frank Thistlethwaite, UEA's first Vice-Chancellor, who masterminded the project. For a few years the village was to be the whole university campus, and it consisted of 13 buildings for teaching and research, but not residential. It had to cost £250,000 and be up and running in 10 months. 50 years ago I was standing on this spot in the snow of 1963, looking at a field surrounded by pleasant trees, sloping down to the river and with a flock of sheep on it. This was to be the site of the first UEA village, where the first students were taught. It lasted 25 years and then has been replaced by another village, which this time for students to live in. On this drawing I'm standing on the top of the site, looking into the quadrangle round which were the social buildings, dining, common rooms, lecture room and the arts faculty. Lower down the hill were the much larger science schools dominated by biology here. Competitive tenders for the timber buildings themselves had to be based on a virtual building rather than the actual designs which were still being worked on. Medway Buildings of Rochester in Kent were awarded the contract. For the same reasons of shortage of time, the Quantities of Air Jack Stockings broke down the construction into 7 separate contracts rather than one. The first of the contracts related to earth moving, and it started at the beginning of 1963, exactly the same moment as the beginning of the notorious 1963 freeze-up. This meant that the contractor could not dig up level platforms for the timber buildings in exactly the positions that I had directed, because the soil was frozen down to a metre. The solution was that we had to dig large amounts of frozen earth out and get rid of it and replace it with gravel. By the late spring of 1963, many of the buildings were up. And one warm afternoon I was on site looking at them with a colleague when a massive 2-storey seminar building, which was virtually complete, suddenly crashed to the ground with an almighty thud and a huge cloud of dust. What had happened is that one vital component inside had been left out by mistake. 3 days later the building was back up again and lasted without any further trouble for 25 years. Here we are inside one of the large laboratory buildings. Medway have not yet quite finished, they've still got to put their plasterboard up, but much of the money of the total contract was involved with 2 fitting out contracts. This involved painting, decoration, floor finishes, plastering and such things. And also a lot of furniture, built-in furniture was involved, particularly for the scientific buildings. Here are 2 guys painting the outside of the plywood walls of one of the buildings. And health and safety experts of today should turn their eyes away. Look at that man on top of a pair of steps, no hard hats or anything like that, and no protection to the scaffolding. Unfortunately, we did have a serious accident when somebody working in the dark on one of the roofs fell through a roof light aperture and didn't survive. Here we are standing on the roof of the big biology building, overlooking the bottom end of the quadrangle. The buildings on the left are the 3 buildings forming the arts faculty, and down at the bottom we can see the river behind a splendid copper beech tree. This is what the site looked like for most of the summer, with people coming along all the time digging more and more trenches for pipes and drains and so forth. But suddenly, when the landscape, who was the last man in, had finished, the site looked like this. From the start of this project, way back on those wintry days, and with 7 contractors working on the site side by side, there was a remarkably good atmosphere, perhaps because of the unusual nature of the whole thing and the privilege felt by all concerned to be associated with a new university. So site meetings were numerous and had plenty of problems, but they were never acrimonious. And all was helped by the very positive and energetic clerk of works, Cecil Davis, who was able to foresee problems before they happened, get people together and sort them out. Here is an aerial shot of the completed project, result of all our hard work. And if you remember, I was standing in the quadrangle, which is at the top right-hand corner of this picture, looking down the hill towards the river, which you can clearly see at the bottom. In the middle, at the bottom of the picture, is Earlham Lodge, which became the University Senior Common Room, and to its right, Earlham Church, and beyond that, Earlham Road, familiar today. All the contracts completed on time, and as I recall, on cost. All, in fact, was ready for the first students to arrive in October 1963.